Hello everyone and welcome to another World War II video with wartime whistles. And today we're going to do a small documentary on the Guadalcanal Campaign. And this campaign went from August 1942 to February 1943. It was the first major Allied land offensive against Japan, and it aimed to secure Guadalcanal's airfield called Henderson Field to halt Japanese expansion in the South Pacific. The countries involved in this campaign were the US, Australia, and New Zealand against the Empire of Japan. And key battles in this were the Battle of Savo Island in August of 1942. That was an early Japanese naval victory. And what happened was there were Allied carriers that sank, and they were hit from the air, mainly by the air from aircraft, so dive bombers and all sorts of aircraft. The Battle of the Eastern Solomons in August 1942, that was a naval and air battle that halted Japanese reinforcement attempts. The Battle of Cape Esperance, I don't know if I pronounced that name right, but that happened in October of 1942, and that was a U.S. naval success against the Tokyo Express. I don't know what the Tokyo Express was, but if you know what the Tokyo Express was, please put that in the comments if you know what it was. I'd love to hear what it actually was. The Battle of Santa Cruz Islands in October 1942, you hear that a lot being talked about in World War II. That was a costly naval battle damaging aircraft carriers on both sides. And of course, the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, November 12th to the 15th, 1942. That was a series of intense naval and air fights where the U.S. blocked Japan's final major effort to retake the island. And I might not pronounce this name right, but the last one was the Battle of Tassafaroana, November 1942. Like I said, I don't think I pronounced that name right. That was a final Japanese destroyer-led attempt to supply troops a tactical win for Japan, but it strategically failed to change the campaign's outcome. The objective for the Allies was to secure Henderson Field to prevent Japanese air and naval bases threatening supply lines to Australia and establish a forward base. So the aircraft that really saw action in this campaign were the SBD Dauntless, that was a dive bomber that saw action on the Battle of Midway, which was the turning point for the U.S. in the war. The F-4F Wildcat, the Navy's primary fighter in the early stages of the war. That was the one that had the manually folded wings, so you manually had to fold and unfold them. And both the Dauntless and the Wildcat were carrier-based aircraft. And the Avenger was a torpedo bomber, and that was a big plane. So the Dauntless and the Avenger, there's a couple ways that you could tell the difference, and that's because the tail gunner has a round compartment on the Avenger where the Dauntless does not. And of course, those were all planes that were basically bombers. You know, the pilots actually called the SBD Dauntless, the pilots of these things, they said SBD stood for, in their saying, slow but deadly. That's what the SBD Dauntless pilots called them back in the war years. So I found that out by a video I watched from the History Underground. He does a lot of World War II stuff, so that's how I was able to find out that the SBD pilots actually nicknamed the plane that. But anyway, that's it for this video. Please like, subscribe, and turn on that notifications bell for more, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.
Then began one of the most desperate campaigns in the history of the Marine Corps. For supplies, the U.S. fighting men depended to a great extent on what they had seized from the Japs. Time and again, though heavily outnumbered, they threw back the attacks of picked Japanese troops with terrific losses. Supporting naval units repeatedly blasted Japanese sea forces, attempting to land reinforcements on Guadalcanal. The battle-hardened U.S. Navy was showing the standards of gunnery, daring, and leadership that had long been its proud tradition. This series of attacks culminated in the memorable night engagements of November 1942, when warships slugged it out with each other in the darkness,